Okay. Good evening once again. Welcome to the special developers. I think this is going to be our first session after our 1 week break, and we will quickly go over, use some 2 minutes to go over what we did, like just to have a recap for the sake of those of us who joined us joined us during the break. Yeah, so over the I think for the past 3 weeks, we've been learning um, how to put our WebGIS or our geoportal together, and all the things that we've learned from the QGIS, where we stored our data sets, we published our data sets into the geo server, and also we tried to also explore the plugin in QGIS. That's it's called QGIS to Web, where we try to export our shapefile as a web application in QGIS. And I think we came down to learn the basics of HTML, how to open an HTML tab, how to add a CSS, how to add the JavaScript, and if I remember, the last thing that was taught was around jQuery. So today, we are just going to bring all these things, we are going to put all them together so that we will now appreciate the little JavaScript that you were taught, the little jQuery that you were taught, the little CSS that you were taught, and the little HTML that Eugene also taught you, right? So I'm going to share my screen. Please, if you can see my screen, you let me know.
Yes, we can see.
Okay. All right. So hope you can see my test editor.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. All right. So the main thing on our agenda today is to go through an introduction to Leaflet. So to get the documentation for Leaflet, someone will ask me, what is Leaflet? Leaflet is a mapping library that is mainly used for WebGIS or map WebGIS development. Yeah. So if you want to build any application where you want to visualize your shapefile or any geospatial data sets, you can either use Leaflet. Leaflet is one of them. We have Leaflet, we have Open Layers, we have Mapboss, we have CCM, we have a couple of them in the market. But for the purpose of this program, we've adapted Leaflets for our development. Leaflet is lightweight, and there are lots of documentation online. So when you get stuck anywhere and you need any function, any plugin, you can just go online, and there are a lot of plugins in there you can use. So we will just visit their website. That is leaflet.com. That is the official website. So the main purpose of this session is to just walk you through. Then we'll create our first WebGIS map from scratch. Then your assignments. Yeah, let me just put your assignments on the floor before I even complete whatever I'll be teaching today. So that as I'm teaching, you will be planning how to execute your assignments. So the assignment for today is to use the templates that Jed and Eugene shared. You know, Jed and Eugene shared a certain template. That was our main template. So that's the template that we are going to use for that's going to be our final product. So from today to the next 3 weeks or 4 weeks, the weeks ahead of us, all that we are going to do, I'm just going to teach you the bits and pieces of everything in different files. It's up to you, the mentee, to put all these functionalities together in that template. Right? So after the first session, the second session, and the third session, then I will take the templates, then replicate whatever we did in the previous sessions into that template, so that gradually you will see that your portal or your WebGIS application is being developed. I want to break down all these things so that you understand when you see any functionality on anybody's geo portal, you should know which function is behind it. Or when you inherit anyone's code online, you should know what the function is doing and how you can manipulate the codes. All right. So when you visit, let's come back to our agenda. That's the leaflet. When you come to the official website for leaflets, so that's the welcome page. So already you see some maps in there with some codes in there. You shouldn't be scared of the code. I always try as much as possible to encourage people I teach that whenever you see any codes in any documentation, don't be scared of it. This documentation is always there, and it will be there till the time this program, this whole project will now come out and say we are not continuing with this project. We are shutting the system down. The documentations are there. Everything is online. So just try as much as possible to understand the basics. Like, let's say when you take this particular function or this line of code, what is this code doing? There is no need for you to like cram everything into your head, right? You should know what leaflet tile.layer is doing. Then if you want to add it to the map, okay, so if I want to add a base map to the map, this is how I do, like it has to be done. This is the set of code that has to be placed in my code in order for the work to be done, right? So I'm going to show you, then we will now put everything together as we go on. All right, so I think I shared this link with you, and some of you might have gone through it, but for the sake of all of us, the majority will just go through. So I want us to go to tutorials. When you go to tutorials, there are a lot of stuff in there which you can explore, right? So as a beginner, we want to go with a quick guide, the quick start guide. So if you want to use leaflets, this guide will just take you through how to quickly build your or initialize your map to add your data sets to the map, right? And all your other functionalities. Yeah, and so for today's session, I will create a data set. Sorry, I'll create a folder. So I'm expecting each and every one of you to create a folder, right? So I'm going to create a folder in my application. Let me just create any folder here. In my application, I will say tutor living. Okay. So mine is leaflets. Well, let me make it leaflet underscore map underscore one. Okay, so that's my folder. You can name it any name that you want, and I'll come into that folder. So this is my application, and for best practice, when you want to develop any application, being whichever language that you are going to use, try as much as possible to arrange your files in folders so that you can easily like go to a particular file when there is any error, you'll be able to navigate to that. If everything is in there, and let's say you inherit you give your codes or your app to someone, the person finds it difficult to go through your what do you call it, your codes or your app. So I've created a folder here called leaflet map underscore one. I'll create another one in another folder in here called CSS. And I think Eugene showed you an example. This is how I personally arrange my stuff. You can also decide to do otherwise, but for the purpose of my illustration, I'm just going to keep it this way. So I'm creating folders for all the static files, my CSS, my JavaScript, and my images. If possible, if I'm going to use images, I'll just create a folder for image, right? Then I'm going to launch my Sublime. Then I'll drag my folder onto Sublime so that I'll have my application in Sublime. So at this point, I'm going to wait for 1 minute for all of us to get to this point. Then I'll continue. We don't want to leave anyone behind. Okay. So we've created our folder. That's our mother app. My app is called Leaflet Map underscore one. So that's our first tutorials. Then for our first tutorials for Leaflet. So I've created a folder in there called CSS, another folder called images, another folder called JS. Okay, so let's continue. So in the mother folder, right, I'll just right click on it, right, and create a new file in that folder. And that new file, I will name it, I will save it as map.html. All right, so you can see how the hierarchy is. So we have our mother app, the mother folder, that's leaflet map underscore one. And when you come in there, we have the folder called CSS, a folder called images, and a folder called JavaScript or JS. So when I close it, so you can see that, yeah. So let's do that. Then I continue. Okay, so let's move on. So as you were taught in your HTML lessons, we are starting an application, right? We want to develop a WebGIS application. This is our HTML. So let's try something out. Go to your folder, right? Go to your folder. Where's my folder? Okay, so here's it. Then just run this. Run the app. So you can see there is nothing there. It is empty. So this is our map HTML. We have nothing in there, right? So we are now going to put content in that HTML. We want to put content in that HTML. So open our HTML tag. If you are using Sublime, it will automatically create these tags for you. The moment you type in, you open the tag HTML, you hit on HTML, it creates the tag, the structure for you, right? So I'm going to give my map or my HTML a title. So I will say it's map. That's the title. The title of my application is map, right? Then as you were taught, we have our head, we have our body, and this is the mother tag, that's HTML. So everything that we want to show on the map or in our browser has to go in here, the body, inside the body. So let me for the purpose sake of those of us who were not part of the lessons, I'll just put in something. I'll create a tag here. So let's say my map. Okay, I close the tag. I come back to my browser. I run, and you can see in here. So that is the text I just typed. So which means that everything that we are going to do here is going to come in this white space, right? All right. So I'll just clear everything here. Then let's go back to our leaflet page because that's what we are going to use for our development today. All right. So we come to the leaflet quick start guide. Then we have to, first of all, reference the leaflet library, right? And the leaflet library comes with a CSS and what? A JavaScript. You can decide to download what do you call it? You can decide to download the plugin, the library. But for the purpose of this illustration, I'm going to use the CDN. That's the link, right? So I'll copy my CSS link, come to my file, and the CSS link should always be in the head, right? So I've added that. Then I will now reference the JavaScript, and this JavaScript, I will get this. Let me copy that with the comments. So I'll get this and paste it at the bottom of the body. So inside the body, let me just create in some space here. Inside the body, I paste this here, right? So I have my scripts here. Let me just clear this up, right? So we have our scripts here. That's our JavaScript, leaflet.js, and we have our leaflet.css, right? So that's what we have here. Okay, so let's go back to our documentation. So it says if you want to initialize any leaflet map, you should have what? A container or a div. And in our body, we should have a div in there, right? And the div should have an ID, right? And over here, they've given it an ID of map, like a name map. This name can be defined. You can use any name that you want to use, but for their documentation, they used map. So let's copy this in here. I'm doing this purposely for you to know how these work. Then when we take off, I'll just be saying the stuff, so you'll be writing them, or I'll be typing, and you'll be looking at it and do the same at the end. All right, so we have our map container here, and there's one thing with leaflets that we have to take notice of. Now we have our map container. So we declare the div, right? And with the div, we've given it an ID of map. Maybe in yours, you can give it an ID of your initials. Let's try something else. Instead of map, I can decide to use my initials. So my initials EOK and EOK and Estopoku. So that's my initials. So I've given this div my initials, right? In the same way, you can also do that. But let me revert it back to its original state. Okay. And with leaflets, the div should have, before the map can initialize, that container should have a height, right? So you have to add a height to that container. Without the height, the map will not initialize. when I say initialize, meaning when you go in there and you run the page, you wouldn't see anything. After you've added the initializer, you wouldn't see anything there, right? So to do that, we'll add the style, and the style is what this is what they've defined. You can see, and I hope by now we all understand this. When you see any hash key with a name, it means an ID. That name just after the hash key is an ID. When you see dots, so assuming this were to be dot map. Okay, let me just come to our script. So when in our we will add our CSS to our CSS. I'll just add a temporal CSS here, just for a CSS tag, just for us to check something out. We'll create our CSS files and add these things. So over here, right? So this is our CSS tag. When you see anything, I think Eugene made mention of it. When you see map, this is an ID. Assuming this were to be class, then this would have been dots. So when you see any dots with any inscription, so it means that whatever you have here, the label you have here is a class, right? Okay, so let's continue. So whenever you see anything like this, it means you are referring to an ID, and the ID we have here is map, right? So we are going to give our map a height. So you give it a height. I will just give it 80 VH. I wouldn't explain what VH is because Eugene has already made mention. If you want to get all these things, kindly refer back to those videos and catch up with the class. Right. All right. So VH, you've given it a height, and this height is going to take 80% of the screen anytime you load. So it wouldn't cover all the screen, right? All the screen that the application will be loaded on. Now let's go back to our documentation. So this will be our initializer. So we have l.map, and it has been set. This set view here is saying that whenever the map loads, right, I want the map to zoom into this coordinate, right? So whenever the map loads, I'm saying over here, so this l.map is a leaflet function, and we are saying that initialize the map in a certain container. So this is the container that we declared the ID, the map ID. That's the ID. So if you use your initials, here should be your initials. Whichever name that you use for your container, the ID of your container, that should be here. And we have set view. Set view should be the coordinates in which you want your map to be set to. And the third thing we have here is the zoom level. So it says initialize a map in a container called map or a div called map with an ID called map, and set the view, right? Center the map to a certain coordinate called 51.505, comma negative 0.09. Then after you set the view to that coordinate, I want you to zoom into the level 13 for the user to. So that should be our initial zoom level, right? So we are going to replicate that in our code. So let's copy that, right? Then over here, we'll create a script tag. Then in the script tag, we will add this in here, right? Over here, I want to set this coordinate. Okay, someone is saying I should increase the font size. Please, is it okay? I hope it's okay now. Please, if you can see that fonts and the fonts, let me know if I have to increase it more. Please. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So we put our variable. So we declared a variable called map, right? And we are saying that this variable called map, we are assigning this variable to our initializer. And this initializer, we are trying to initialize the map in a certain container. This is the ID here, right? This ID. So if you use, let's say, I'm using map ID. So here will be map ID, right? So we have map ID here. We have map ID here. So the ID here is what I'm referencing here. And over here, I'm saying that set the view to a certain coordinate. So defaultly, we will use what we copied. Then we'll leave it to the zoom level. We'll come back and change it. So we can now save it, then come back to our map and let's run it. Oops, what happened? Let's check if there is any error. Okay, there is no error. Okay. So who can tell me what the issue is? There is no error. The map is not showing.
We've not added it to the map yet.
Come again?
We've not added it to the map yet. We only set the view parameters.
No, please.
It's big file that is in the. It's after the head closed. I mean the closed tag of the head. Is that maybe?
No, please. So I made mention of something that the map can only initialize when it has a height, right? We've given it a height, right? So you can see over here, when I was trying to explain the ID here, I changed the map ID, the ID here to map ID, right? Instead of map. So you can see that. So over here, meaning over here, the ID here should be what? Map ID instead of map. Because we are giving this container a height. It's no more map, it's now map ID. Right? Yeah, so I'll just change the name to our name now, that is map ID. Then I'll save it. Let's go back. Now our map has initialized. Right? Why is the map not loading? I'm sure it might be my internet. Okay, so far as I'm seeing this, the map has initialized, which means that now our map works. All right, I have this site that will help you get different base maps. Let me change the base map and see if that works. All right, so I'll share this link in I'll put it in the page, on our page, for you to have access to this link. There are a lot of free open source links which we can use on the app. So that's the link. When I upload the video I'll put it in the description so that those of us who will be following from our YouTube page can also get access to it. All right. Let me try and see if I can get some nice base map to use. All right. Let me use this. I think this is nicer. So when you click on the link, all the base map you see, the majority of them are free. When you click on the base map and you come here, right, and you see any API key, it means that that particular base map is not for free. You have to pay for it. Usually, when you go to their website, you have to get a subscribe to that base map and get it and get the link, and you'll be given an API secret key and an ID to use. But for these ones, they are just free. So I'll just copy this, right? And I'll bring that to my code. Where is it? Okay. So I'll just do this. You know, before we added, the reason why we're not seeing the base map was because we didn't add any base map to the map. We only initialized the map, right? So over here, we are now adding our base map. So this is a new base map we are adding. We could have used, if we're to go by the documentation, we could have added this base map to it, but we are using the base map that I've copied. You can also use the one here, right? But I'm going to use this base map for my illustration. So I'll just come back to my code. All right, then I'll add the base map to my map. Up. Okay. So now the base map has been added to my map. Let's go. So you can see that when I initialize the map, there was nothing showing. You can see that the map has been initialized into the container. Now, when I refresh it, I'm supposed to get the base map. So that is my base map. So now my base map is showing. I've added a base map to the map, right? So let me zoom. Okay. So the coordinates that was in the set view was centered to London. Let me be biased here. Because I'm in Ghana, I'll get the coordinates in Ghana and add it to the map. I'll center the map to Ghana. For those of us who don't know Ghana, will know where Ghana is located, right? Where Ghana is located. So let me just pick any data here. I think this data is in Ghana. So let me just pick the middle. So -1. Okay, so I can take 7.6 -0.09. All right, so I'm centering my map to a coordinate in Ghana. So I'll say 7.6 minus 0.09. So you can center the map to whichever country you are located, just for you to get it. And this coordinate is in the middle of Ghana. So I'll just reduce the zoom level so that I can get the full extent of Ghana, right? So I'll change this to 6, zoom level 6. Let's try 6 and see if 6 is not good. I'll change it to 7. So now let me close my inspector to panel. Let me just close it. So when I refresh it now, yeah. So we have Ghana in full extent. So that's Ghana. Yeah. Let me see if I can go further. Let me try 7. If 7 will be better. Let me try 7. Okay. All right. So I'll just manage the 7. So I'm going to pause for 1 minute for those of us who are trying to catch up with the class to do so before we continue. Because we started with our GeoPortal development, our WebGIS development. So I expect you to now appreciate all the things that you've taught for the past 3 weeks. We are implementing everything here. Let me see if there are some messages. Right. Okay, I think we are doing good. right. Let's move on. So we have our map initialized. We have one base map added to the map. You can have several of them, but I want us to touch base on all the things that I want to tackle today, so that in our subsequent sessions we'll add all the dynamics to it, adding multiple base maps, adding Google base maps to it, getting all the other things added to it. We'll do that in our subsequent lessons. So in every map, right, this is a web application, right? And we usually, I don't know if you've seen QGIS, where I went to pick the coordinates. You can see when I hover the map on so this QGIS. When I hover the map on the data or on the map, anywhere in the map, you can see the coordinates here. Can you see that? Right. So you can see when I hover, the coordinates change, right? So we want to replicate that in our WebGIS, right? So wherever we hover, we want to get the coordinates in a certain container, right? So mainly today is going to be more of functionalities for the map, even before we bring the data onto the map. So you just hover and the coordinates changes, right? So what we are going to do is to add a line of code. To do that, you only have to add a line of code to your codes. So let's come back to our let's come back to our let me prettify it for it to get it in shape, right? And for the purpose of, because I'm going to add this file to our repository, let me just give it a comment. So please add a comment to it. Yeah, forgive me. Every line of code that you type in there, put a comment to it for you to be able to understand what each line is doing. So I'm just commenting. I want to give a comment to this line of code, what we just added. So I'll say add base map to map. So that's a comment for this. Then I'll give a comment for this particular line. I will say initialize
I have a question, please.
subsequently. Okay.
You did something recently to arrange the lines of code.
The code. Yeah. So yeah. Sorry. So with that particular one, there is a plugin in Sublime. You can Google that. It's called Prettifier. If you are using VS Code, there's one called Beautifier. There's another one called Prettifier in VS Code. Whichever browser you are using, just go to your plugins. So whichever test editor you are using, go to your plugins and search for either Prettifier or Beautifier or any of these two. You should do it. But this works with, you have to have Node.js installed on your machine before this works, right? So maybe you can try that on the site. I can try and help you get it installed, right? Maybe after this session, right? So yeah, so that will, anytime you write a line of code, you just have to highlight everything. You right click and it will just arrange the code for you. Okay, so let's add our line of code. And before we do that, there's one other library that I'm supposed to add to our app. That is our jQuery. You know, that was the last thing we learned under our JavaScript. So to do that, I will come back to our browser. Then I will say jQuery. You can just go for jQuery CDN. Okay, so that's a minute. Just go for jQuery CDN and go in there. I will use the uncompressed version. Then I'll just copy this line. So just copy that and just come to your codes in there then just put it right after the referencing of the leaflets. Just put it there. Oh, sorry. I placed it in the tag, the script tag. All right. You know, we created a folder called CSS, image, and JS. We'll use that later. This is just, I'm trying to show you how to do these stuffs. God willing, our next session, we'll arrange everything in these folders and we'll continue with our development. All right. So we've referenced our library jQuery, right? And I think Jedediah took you through how the jQuery works. So jQuery is a JavaScript library, and it makes coding in JavaScript much more easier and faster, right? So to do that, so now our main objective is to get this functionality. So you can see this coordinates. When you hover on the map, then you can get the coordinates of where the mouse pointer is. That's our main objective. We want to implement the same function on our map. So to do that, let me just give a comment here. So I'll say uh, coordinates on map, coordinates and mouse move. All right, so that's my comment. So to do that, I'll just say I'll reference the map, right? And I'll say map on. So this is a JavaScript. So I'm saying map on move is a JavaScript event. So mouse on move, or mouse move. So we are saying that when the mouse is moving, right? So just get this function. Right. Right. So I'll say when the mouse is moving, we want to get the event, right? So I'm going to call I'm going to I would have highlighted it, but let me print that in the console. So let's say console, and I know Jedediah taught you what this means. So we want to um, check the content of that event when we hover on the map, what happens, right? So I will save this and go back to the map. Let's come back here. Then to do that, I'll right click on the map and come to inspect. Yeah, so when you come to inspect, come to your console. You can see we have no message or no error showing. If there is any error on the page, this is where to see that error. So when you are loading your map and the map is not loading, it's not initializing, or you are expecting something to show on the map, and if the thing is not showing, please come to the console, check where the issue is, and go to that particular line and fix it. So the line of code that I wrote here, let me just project that again for you to see. So we are saying that mouse.on, mouse move. So you are saying that that's a JavaScript event. So you are saying that when mouse move, when the mouse is moving on that container, we want to get the event. We want to check the event, and under the event, we are sure we will get the long last of that event. So I'll hover on it. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I changed it to map ID. Map ID. Oh, sorry. What did I do? Yeah. Okay, sorry. So it was, I forgot I gave a variable called map to the map ID. So that I'm calling that container. So you can see that when I hover on the map, let me clear the screen. Let me clear the console. When I hover on the map, the moment I come to the map, the events prints out. So these are the events. So everywhere I move, it prints the events here. So we just need one. So this is one event. Let's check something out here. So the event is printing something out here. So we have container points. You can see the container points. We have lat long. So that was the location I moved the pointer to. So anywhere you move the pointer, it prints out the location. Sorry, the events. So this everything in here comes with the event. But we are not interested in all these things, the targets. We are not interested in all these things. All that we are interested in is what our lat long, right? So we want to get this and print this here in the bottom of the map. That's what we are interested. So we want to get the map, the lats, and the lat long, right? So to do that, let's come back here. So this was the map I was talking about. So I initialized it to this variable, and I'm saying that this map here on events, when you move it on, let's just print the events for me or log the events in the console. So that's what we just did. So we want to get this event printed in the HTML, right? So I'm going to create another div in the, let me come down here. So, in the body, we have only one container or one div. That is our map ID div, right? So I'm going to create another div and I'll give it a name coordinate or cod. So I'll give it a div, right? Then I'm saying this has an ID and the ID is what? CO. You can give it any name, but make sure that where you are going to append it, you make sure you use your own the name. I'm using cod. Let me just make it coordinate, just to make it go, right? So we have our coordinates, our coordinate container. That's what we have here. Now we want to now show this coordinates we have here in that container, right? We want to show that in that container. So to do that, we will now come in here. We don't need this again. We don't need this again. So I'll just clear this off. Then we will call our selector using our JavaScript. So we will call that ID. So we use this selector we are now applying jQuery here. So we are saying that selector, this is ID. So we are trying to tell the code, the browser that go to this particular ID. So our ID is what? Coordinates, right? That's what we give it. Let me see. Okay, coordinates. Let me just copy that and bring it here. So we are saying that on the map event, there is a certain container called coordinates, right? It has an ID called coordinates. We want you to add this, so we will use .html, right? And the .html is going to help you get this string on the HTML body or in that container, right? So I will just open this symbol. What's the name of this? Is it quotation mark? This is not quotation mark. So it's a when you check your your keyboard, the button right under the escape, right? There is a kind of quotation mark in there. So we are going to use that. Then I'm saying that lat right? So this is the label. I'm saying the lat, and I'll bring this jQuery the dollar sign. Then I will say E. The E is the event here. So assuming if you have any, so E is the event here. So the event here, we want you to go to the lat long, right? We want you to go to the lat long. Then under the lat long, we need the lat, just the lat. So let me show you something here. The event we printed. So you can see that. So this is the whole event. Let me just close this. So this is the event. When I open it, inside that event, let me just, I don't know if this will be bigger for you to see. All right, so this is much clearer. So this is the event. So this is one of the events I just opened. So this is the event here. And we are saying that inside this event, come to lat long. So we call this keyword. So the event is in a dictionary. So we are calling the keyword called lat long, right? So that's what I placed there. This lat long. Here is it. And I'm saying that inside the lat long, we need the, let me come back to the browser. Sorry. Inside the lat long, we need the lat, right? So where we want to print it, we need just the lat for now. So we will come here and just add the lat, right? Then I'll say comma, then I'll add longitude or the long. Then I'll bring the quotation, the colon. Then I'll say a dollar sign. Then I bring my curly brackets. Then I'll say now we want to now get the long. So in the events, we call the keyword in that particular event, that is the lat long, right? Then this time around, we are going to call the long. So this is what we are seeing here. So now this time around, we've entered the events. So this is the event. We are calling the lat long. Then under the lat long, we are calling the long, right? I hope this is okay. You've understood how I'm getting the parameters. So we've gotten the lat long here. So that's the lat. So this is the lat, this is the long. So what we are trying to tell the system is that on map hover, go to this particular container or this div, right? Print out, this is a string, right? Lat. So lat colon, then the location, the latitude of that particular location and the longitude of that particular location, right? So save it and let's go to your script and run it. Okay, so we don't have any error. So now let's check something. Let's check the bottom here, over here. Okay, so there's an error. It says what? Lat cannot read property lat. Okay. All right. I'm thinking it's capital L.
I think you made a mistake in lat long, actually. LNG instead of long.
Oh boy. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So that's it. All right. So let's refresh that and now bring it. So you can see that when I hover on the map, there are longitude and latitude changes. So when I hover on the map, it gets the location, the location or the coordinates and append it to that particular div. I hope you get that. So that's the coordinates. And usually in Leaflet, they've built plugins to handle this. So this is like the hard way to do it. In other ways, you can also go get the link to a certain plugin, get it into your application, then just use one line of code to get this on your map. But because I'm teaching you the basics, I want you to know how these things are being built, right? Okay, so now we have our coordinates on our map. It's already 8. Wow. We have our coordinates on our map. Then the one other thing I want us to add to our map. So now we have our long lat here. We want to also add our scale bar or our scale to the map, right? We want to add our scale to the map. So to add the scale to the map, let's come to our code. All right. So over here, I'll say add skill to map, right? And I'll come down. So to add skill to the map, you add a controller or a control. So Leaflet has a control called skill. So we'll just add that to the map. So we'll say l.control, right? Then we say the skill, right? Then we want the control to be on the bottom left, right? So we'll give it a property, we'll position it, we'll add an option. So this is the position. We'll just position it to the bottom left, right? So we'll position it to the bottom left. So say, sorry, I have to bring a quotation up. I'll say bottom left, right? Then after, I will add to map. Oh, okay. Then there's one thing. So this is the line of code we are adding. This is just simple, just like that. One thing you also have to have it in mind. There's anytime you are typing and there's an error, the first thing that has to bear in mind, leaflet functions usually are in camel case. So when you can see add then two, the two is capital. Over here, check the title. So you have l.title is for tile, then map. So most of their function, like it's cuts across. They use the camel case for their functions. So when you're typing and maybe mistakenly you type small l, something should prompt you that, hey, is this actually a leaflet function? Right? You just do the right thing. So anytime I'm typing and I type in something, I know it's a leaflet function I'm trying to call, and I type the thing and I realize that the way I've typed the thing, there's something wrong with it, and I have to check the right case. And usually it helps you to remove some of the errors even before you run the code. All right, so let's save it. Then we come to the map and refresh the map. So you can see that we have our scale here. So when I zoom in, the scale changes. Can you see that? All right. So we have our map added, base map added. We have our coordinates added. We have our scale added. And someone will ask a question. Oh, okay. I have this map controller here, right? I don't need it here. Per my design, the design. Let me close this. Per my map design or per the application I'm designing, this controllers has to come to the right. I need this at the right instead of the left. You can do it by changing the position, right? So when you come here, I will say, okay, sorry. Let me just close in the gap, then just follow. So I will say change position of zoom control. All right. Right. So I want to change the default position of the map control. So to do that, I will just type in our map. That is our map initializer. Then I'll say map dot zoom control, right? So map dot zoom control, and I will say dot. We are going to set a position. So we are saying that set position, right? then we are saying that this time around we need it at the top left, right? So Leaflet usually has three positions. It has the top left, the bottom left, the bottom right, and the and the top right. So it has four positioning: top left, top right, bottom right, bottom left, and top left. So now we want to move this to this side. That's our top right. So we are going to do that. So we say right top right. Okay. So let's refresh our page, and we have our base, or our zoom controller moved to the right side, right? So today we've learned three things: how to initialize our map, how to get the mouse move, the mouse move, or the coordinate of the pointer, and also how to change the positioning of our zoom controller. The same way, this particular scale here, you can also move it to the bottom right by changing this line of code, by changing where we added the scale here to bottom right, and it should change to. So when I change this to right, it will move it to the right. Okay, all right. So let's do one last thing, then we'll bring today's session to an end. Let's go to our documentation. So we've done everything here, right? So we just want to add a coordinate, a certain, like a marker to the map. So let's just copy this code, right? Let's copy this code. We'll just bring it down here. I'll say add marker to map. So I've declared a variable called marker, and I'm using this function, that's ll dot function. So that's the function or the controller so the function to add a marker to the map. So all that function is to pass through your longitude and your latitude to it. So because my map is centered in Ghana, I'll just go and get this coordinates just for me to see where I centered the map to. So I'll just copy this coordinate where I centered the map to. Then I'll just add it to this one. Then let's go back to our map, refresh. Then it shows me where I centered the map to. So I centered the map to this point, and I zoomed in. So that we've added a marker to the map. So it's as simple as that, right? So in our next session, that will be Thursday. So Thursday, what we are going to do, I gave you some data sets. I shared some data sets. If you don't have that, you can go to the GitHub repository, go into the folder, the data sets folder. You see a zip file, and that zip file has all the data sets that we'll be using. So there are some data sets in there. We are going to try as much as possible to load as many as we can on the map, right? So we will learn how to load the GeoJSON, learn how to load our WMS. Then we will try to add some plugins to the map. And it's up to you to get all these functionalities into that template that we've given you, right? So at this point, I'll open the floor for questions, and we'll end the session for today. So the floor is open for questions. All right, thank you very much. So if you have any question, you can type it in the chats. I'll read it out, and we can all go through those questions. So the floor is open for questions. are we all fine up until this point? Because the next time we come back, I wouldn't go back to all these because in my head we've already tackled these, so I'll just move straight to the other stuffs. Then we'll be good to go. All right, since we are all quiet, it means we've understood today's session, whatever we did today. So God willing, Thursday we'll have a session, our second session for Leaflet. Then that will be more detailed. So let's prepare ourselves. Let's just go through the documentation, go through what I taught today. Then, God willing, on Thursday we'll have a detailed session. Yeah, yeah. So thank you very much, and let's keep practicing and let's stay in touch. If you have any error or encounter any problem during the practice within the next 2 days, try as much as possible to hit me up and I'll be glad to help you. Thank you very much and have a wonderful evening. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.